All right, so this is a group. It's Taylor, Carmen, Alexis, and Frida, and we have chosen the Berlo SMCR model of communication. It represents the process of communication in the simplest form. The acronym SMCR sender, channel, and receiver. The model of communication describes components that form the basic process of communication. The first one is a source or sender. This is the way that you can determine the ideal source of communication has to be the first step. You have to understand the acceptance of the source and select the appropriate source. So let me share. So the first one would be the communication skills. This would be the skill of the individual to communicate. So for example, you need to make sure that your, well, first of all, our group, we have chosen how to do conflict with other coworkers. So this example would be to make sure the other person that you're communicating with has the ability to read, write, speak, or listen, or if they do have one of those where they're not able to do it, then you need to find a communication to match that or a way for them to understand. Attitude is also another way to determine the ideal source of the message. You would want to make sure that you have a good attitude, slow and low speech so that it doesn't come off as too hard or too strong. Knowledge, you want to make sure that the party or the coworker that you're speaking to, like if you were to be talking to someone who might not understand, that you bring it down to their subject or their topic, or bring it up to their subject or their topic. Note would be to just the general knowledge and the subject that you're communicating. Social system would be like aspects of the society, values, beliefs, culture, religion, and a general understanding for the communication to take place. You also want to communicate with your, in this instance, the coworker in a good setting. So you need to make sure that you're talking to them for a way for them to also be able to take that message and communicate properly. So an example that I would do if I was to be discussing an issue with someone is I would take the coworker that I had an issue with, and I would take all aspects of this into place, and that's how I would explain it, or I would go over the issue. I would figure out this person either ahead of time because I've had an issue or I've had contact with them, so I should know the majority of these things. And you can also get a feel for this when you're going to this conversation with them, who should deliver the message and how you should deliver this. And it really, this is the beginning point of this and the most important, because you do want it to start off correctly. You want to make sure that if this falls into place, then everything else should fall into place as well. Trying to look. And I think also to find the appropriate source, you need to figure out if you are talking to a peer or a subordinate, or if it's an outside source. And it does, at the end of the day, the most important is who should be delivering this message and how you should be delivering this message. And the next one, yes. And let me share. And Carmen, which one do you have?
Message. So once you have sent out, once the sender has developed a message that needs to be discussed, whether it be employee to manager or manager to employee or employee to employee, getting across a message, the body of it needs to go from the beginning to the end. And for example, whatever the message is in the workplace, I believe that you should go into the conversation with an open mind, and that the message needs to be clear. So the point of the message and the structure of the message is how it is arranged, the way you structure the message into various parts. Message is the same, but if the structure is not properly arranged, then the message will not get to the receiver. So to elaborate on that, be clear on what you're trying to address if you're an employee to manager. It needs to be case sensitive, but also professional, where it can be thoroughly received by the person you are talking to. The code of the message means how it is sent and what form it could be. Language, body language, gestures, music, even culture is a code. Through this, you get/give the message, or through which the communication takes place or being reached. So going into delivering a message to a manager, for instance, I believe that you shouldn't go in with sassiness or with tension, with anger. I believe that you should go into with an open mind and relax, gather your thoughts, possibly jot down some key points that you want to address so that your point can get across thoroughly, and that they're not going based off of your body language and your tension or an attitude. And lastly, only when the code is clear, the message will be clear. The wrong usage may lead to misinterpretation. So again, just going back on what I previously stated, I believe that you should make sure that your point is very clear, that you go into a closed room, possibly an office or closed space away from everyone else. Keep it private between you and the other person, which is the receiver, and make sure that the message is thorough. Make sure that, again, you go into it with an open mind. Moving forward to
thank you, Carmen.
Berlo.
Moving on to, did you say the channel? Yes. So for this portion that I'm going to talk about in the Berlo model is the channel. And the channel basically embodies our five senses, which is touch, see, hear, smell, and taste. This specific portion of the model, you have to give different, you have to use different elements, which are the senses according to the work setting. So in this specific scenario, it's quite obvious that you can't taste your coworkers, and you cannot actively smell your coworkers because that's just plain out weird and inappropriate for the work setting. And so that kind of leaves us with seeing and hearing. And even then with, touching. We also cannot touch because due to this global pandemic and according to the CDC guidelines, touching is very limited. Now, I understand that touching could be used in this model if you...
A family vacation in a Berlo means...
I don't know where that came from, but it could be used in certain work settings, but for a more corporate setting, obviously you cannot touch your coworker. And even with the pandemic going on, too much physical contact can sometimes be misconstrued, and also it could be taken too far, especially when there is conflict between you and your coworker. So this basically leaves us to hearing and seeing, which I will share a photo. And it's not, screen bigger. It's not what you say, it's not what you don't say that counts. I mean, it's what you say does. Why can I not talk today? Sorry, guys. It's what you don't say that counts, which is very true because body language can say a lot more than verbal communication. People see before they hear you say anything. So with that being said, in any communication model, verbal and nonverbal communication and active listening is the common foundation. And I read in an Indeed.com article, it suggests that we must be aware of our body language when it comes to conversing with our coworkers. Facial expressions and body language and other nonverbal cues can send off signals of communication. So we have to be cautious of our body language and not being so that it can be congruent to what we are saying. You want to look and sound engaged and interested in the conversation. So, obviously don't slouch and work on your posture and look as confident in what you're saying. It's also important to maintain eye contact, and also do not fold your arms or roll your eyes at your coworker, especially when there's tension. It kind of piggybacking off of what Carmen said, you just want to make sure that your message is being conveyed over to your other coworker. Also, too, another nonverbal communication that will basically be used with your senses is also through email. I know we definitely email a lot in this time with people working remote as well as just in person. You have to be cautious with your communication through email with the correct grammar. We cannot cuss each other out in our emails. And also too, using the correct language and just being clear and precise with your messages. So using your senses to your advantage, and you'll be effectively using the source portion of our model. So I'll hand the torch over to Frida.
Okay, so in the Berlo model, it's believed that in order for the communication to be effective, both the source and the receiver have to be on the same page. Only then the communication will happen and will actually take place properly. So your job as the receiver is to hear and accept that the other person has a particular opinion. Now, accepting that the person has a particular opinion does not necessarily mean that you have to agree with that opinion, but your job as the receiver is to hear the opinion and to hear without judgment, most importantly. Some of the steps on how to hear the opinion of others, well, especially considering colleagues and coworkers, the first step would be to focus on the behavior itself and not the person. Focusing on the criticism of the situation that's addressing rather than the person, it allows you to actually separate the problem from the person's identity. So some ways that I have here on, I actually found a few ways on how to handle receiving constructive criticism from coworkers. The first step would be to stop your first reaction. At the first sign of criticism, before you do anything, you have to stop and you have to try not to react at all. So experts, they actually recommend that you wait at least 1 to 3 seconds before responding to a coworker so that it won't come off as aggressive or offensive. The next step would be to remember the benefit of getting feedback. Not all feedback is bad feedback, so we should definitely be open-minded when receiving feedbacks from coworkers and colleagues, as this could be beneficial and informative to ourselves and our jobs overall. Some of the do's and don'ts that I have listed here would be, so when giving feedback, we ask that you start with the positive feedback. Of course, no one wants to hear the negative because it makes you feel like you're being attacked. Um, Also, you have to be specific about the problems that you are addressing. Stick with the particular problem. It's not good to kind of venture off and just bring in personal opinions. The best advice is to keep it professional on all levels, especially when you're dealing with a colleague, because you do not want to make the situation seem as if it's personal. Another advice that I have would be to ask the other person their opinion, and to also focus on things that can be improved, and also focus on facts. Now, the things that we do not want to do would be to exaggerate. No one wants to exaggerate the situation or to make it worse than what it already is. Not too many of us like receiving criticism, especially constructive criticism from colleagues or people that we work with and have to see every day. You have to be general with the problems and start sentences with you, or if you are saying something, well, if you're saying something negative, you have to start sentences. Well, we ask that you do not start sentences with you, as it makes you feel like you're being attacked. So those are the main points that I would like to focus on when receiving information from a colleague. It's very important to make sure that that person, well, the source gives you the information in a correct, clear way so that you're able to understand and to actually just really focus on the problem itself, because the overall goal is to come up with a resolution, and a resolution that won't make you feel like you're being attacked, or like the colleague just doesn't like you. So it's very important to communicate. Well, it's very important to first start with the source, and then for the receiver to understand where they're coming from, so that it'll just be easy overall to just kind of understand and make the changes that are necessary. So yes, that's all that we have for you. And we hope that you enjoyed our presentation.